Boston and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Nancy, Smokehouse. It's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach L.
Coach L is time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, mama, always get the business to empower you, so that you can do anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach L, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La.
Hey. How y'all doing? Welcome back. Oh my goodness. I took a nice long break, y'all. And it was a good one and one that I needed so much. So welcome back to Conversations with Coach La La La. I am Coach La, your favorite around the way therapist, and you are tuned into the Urban Heat, Boston's only Black-owned radio station on the iHeartRadio platform. And that's something to be super excited about. Oh, man. So there's so much to catch up on and so much to let you guys know what I've been doing. As you guys know, we just did an awesome urban escape on the Cape. But with heavy hearts, as you guys can see, I have up on the screen, our sister Talise Rivers passed away. And we are going to be celebrating her on January 23rd. And it's going to be at Greater Love Tabernacle. And then we're going to do a repast at the American Post. So please come out and celebrate the life and legacy of our radio sister, Miss Talise Rivers. And if you can, also donate, because we're raising money to make sure we send her off the way that she deserves to be sent off. And on top of that, we are also doing a benefit concert. Ray Royale is doing a benefit concert on January 22nd. And we are going to be sending her off with music and entertainment. If anybody who knew Talise knows that she loved music, she loved entertainment, she loved supporting artists and supporting the community. So we are going to send her off the right way with a benefit concert. And then on the 23rd, we will be laying her to rest. So please come out and support us as we do that. And yeah, we got heavy hearts about this, man. As Busta Rhymes said when he came to Boston, we have more years behind us and less years ahead of us. So love up on your people, everybody. Really try to live your life to the fullest. Tonight's conversation and tonight's season kicks off season 9. And this is my chapter 50. I've learned a lot these 49 years being here and on this wonderful planet. Some of them great lessons and some of them some sad lessons. So we're going to be talking about healing and evolving and milestones. And tonight's episode is really going to sort of kick all of that off, because I got 2 wonderful guests that are going to help me have a conversation about healing in public. It's a story that I didn't know that they're going to help us get a better understanding about as we jump into season 9, which is all about evolving, healing, and elevating. And what I've learned is that we have to tell each other stories, and we have to have a platform and a space to give voice to the things that matter to us. That's why it's so important that Boston has Black radio, because we get to tell our own stories, uncensored, unfiltered, and all about us. So let me get into who our guests are going to be. I could bore you guys with everything I've been up to. But tonight's conversation really needs special attention, and I want to give the whole hour to really talking about this young man's story. So let me tell you about my first guest. Mr. Charles Rheddick grew up in South End and Roxbury, where storytelling and community shaped much of his perspective. Though he's new to filmmaking, Charles has quickly found his voice through digital media, working behind the scenes, lending his eye as a cameraman, and experimenting with voiceover work during his time in North Carolina. His path has been far from traditional. In 2015, he became an accredited professional picture framer. You got to learn more about that. That means he's good with his hands, y'all. Even running his own framing shop before shifting his focus back to creative storytelling. Today, Charles serves as the board chair of the Survival Sisters Foundation, a nonprofit that's dedicated to empowering women, children, and families through outdoor training and exploration. Charles is also the co-founder of Two Nights Production Company, and he launched with his high school classmate and fellow Boston firefighter, which is now his co-producer of their debut project, A City That Failed Us All, which we're going to talk more about. And so let me bring Charles up first. Hey, Charles.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Charles.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I can hear you just fine.
All right.
How are you doing?
I have no complaints. No complaints.
I'm glad to have you on the show. Thank you for your time. I know you are holding it down out there in Atlanta. So let's get your partner on here next. So let me tell you about Joe Teixeira. He is a native of Boston, Massachusetts, and he also now resides in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, Joe got his passion for filmmaking shortly after he was asked to direct the media department at his church. In 2021, Joe became the producing the church programs for Boston Neighborhood Network, a local cable access channel. This is also the same place where he received training and became certified in field production and digital editing. During this time, Joe also shot promotional videos and commercials for his church, and he had 15 loyal staff members. Go on, Joe. Joe was also well on his way for becoming a well-rounded producer and a director. After years of his training, as the years progressed, his skills matured into becoming a phenomenal film director. In 2008, Joe decided to start his own production company, Shooting for the Future Productions. In 2009, his second company, Joe Tex Films, was birthed. Joe's first project was a documentary, The Marsha Joseph Story. So he's been doing documentaries for a while. The Life of an Overcomer. So let's bring Joe on to the show. Hey, Joe.
Hey, hello. How are you?
Now everybody sounds good. How y'all fellas doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Yes. Blessed.
Yeah, so we have been talking a while offline about your journeys. So outside of your bios, tell the audience, who are you guys? What else should they know about you that they don't know from just looking you up and Googling you?
Well, I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm an uncle. I'm a grandfather. And I work in television right now. People may not know that. So I'm live every week on the air, behind the scenes. And I'm a friend. Most of my friends, or all my friends, know I'm a true friend to them. I'm a proud husband and a proud father of 4. I have 3 biological and 1 godchild that we helped raise. And yes, so that's who I am outside of filmmaking. I'm a proud father, grandfather, and husband.
And you're a retired fireman too, right?
And retired firefighter.
Long
time.
Yes, yes, you have saved a lot of lives. I think that's an important thing to note. Also shapes a lot of the ways you look at, I think, filmmaking too. So, what about you, Charles? What do you want the people to know about you outside of you being a professional framer?
Well, I'm a father of three boys and the proud grandfather of a little girl,
Yes.
my peanut. Um, I try to live my life for, to do for other people. I have to figure out one day, what do you got to be in life? Some people, they care about making a lot of money. That's not, I care about creating things. That's what led me to become a framer. I frame artwork. You saw the pieces I did for my friend who retired. Um, and I like to give people things. I like to say, hey, this is for you, my man. Um, or my friend, whoever. So I like to be creative and I like to teach. Um, Not only do I do the framing, but I do survival training for people. I teach people how to survive in adverse situations and bad weather. I'm a weapons instructor, and I'm an archery instructor. So I moved to Rome, so I believe in doing what the Romans do. So now we're embarking on this project that we want to share with people. We want to share our friends' stories. So that's the next phase of our evolution.
Yes, we're going to get into that too, because this film is very close to both of your hearts. The Darryl K. Williams story, and you are actually his friends, his childhood friends. You guys knew him during this time, and you actually followed along with his story up until him passing away. So this story is near and dear to your hearts. Um, Tell us a little bit about what you want to achieve with this story. I know it's about the shooting and the broader issues that surrounded how he got harmed, but what is the backdrop of why you think this story, and why now? Why is it so important to tell this story now?
Charles, you want me to take it?
You go first, Joe. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
This is God's timing. It's not ours at all. Back in 2008, when I first started my film career, and in Darryl's life, for a while, I always wanted to tell his story. As a young up and coming filmmaker, or a new filmmaker, I should say, I always wanted to tell his story. Once I did the Marsha Joseph story, I said I got to do my friend's story, and my idea was he was supposed to be a part of it. Unfortunately, in 2010, my brother passed away, and from wanting to do his story, that the fire was under me even more once he passed away. But what stopped me from doing it back then was, like anything you do, resources. And how am I going to pull this off by myself? I was talking to his family about it. They gave me their blessings. But as the years progressed and went by, it seemed like it was going to be harder and harder to do his story. There were people that I contacted that I wanted to do the story with, people that was in Darryl's life, but it never went any further than what I written down on the paper, and mainly because of resources. And like I said, it breaks my heart that I couldn't do it while he was here, but this is God's timing. And when Charles reached out to me, we had talked, since that time he passed. Charles and I had talked about doing something for Darryl and about Darryl and getting his story told. But resources and time just didn't let us do it at that time. And that's why it's being done now. And I'll let Charles pick up the story from here, because Charles put that spark back inside of me by reaching out to me. And I'll let him pick up from there. Charles?
Okay. In life, there's a time and place for everything. After Darryl was injured, there were four of us that basically hung with him for the rest of his life while he was alive. Joe was one. I was another. A gentleman named Steve Morgan and a guy named George Coleman. A few years ago, George passed away. And I reconnected with a couple of guys from high school. They also knew Darryl. And going back to your statement that you said Busta Rhymes said, I say a lot, we have more time way more time behind us than in front of us. So after George died, and George was maybe one of the greatest men I knew, after he passed away, something lit inside of me said, we need to do this in a hurry. This happened 46 years ago. So people are not here. There are people that love Darryl that are not here anymore. So we want to tell a story for the people who are here. And we also want to tell a story for everybody else that knows nothing about it. And that's what we're committed to do. As Joe said, after I talked to one gentleman that was at the funeral, the very next person I called was Joe, because like he said, we talked about this forever. We need to do this. We need to do this. We need to do this. And I called him, and Joe kind of said, it's about time. Like he was waiting for my call. So he was like, about time. I'm like, huh? And then that, whatever you believe in, whatever his or her name is, that's who's been guiding this. We were having problems getting things, and then somehow it would appear for us. We interviewed, Darryl's mom is still alive, and we interviewed her. And, we told her about some of the problems and everything. And she said, oh, y'all are all set. Because even before that, when we went to his mother and his sister, we asked for her blessing. We didn't ask for her permission. We asked for her blessing. It was a difference to us. The permission is, thank you, but the blessing is because we sat in Miss Simmons' house so many times after we would take Darryl home from someplace, just talking and gaining all sort of wisdom from this person. So we needed her blessing so she knew we would take care of her son.
So thank you guys. Can we just take a step back and just talk a little bit about who Darryl is? And, because this happened in 1979. And some people may or may not even know what happened to him. So can we just, take a step back and just who was Darryl and what happened?
Go ahead, Charles.
We both know Darryl a little bit differently. I want Joe to start, but I want to talk about this real quick. So Joe knew him because he grew up next to him. I knew him from being the captain of the football team that he wanted to come and play on. So our differences was notable and different, but we both know him as a talented person. So I'm gonna let Joe start off with his relationship.
So, like Charles said, Darryl and I grew up next to each other in the Warren Gardens Housing Development in Roxbury, Mass. There was two sides to our home. There were back doors and front doors. Darryl always went out the back door of his house, and I always went out the front door of my house. The one thing we had in common was sports, football. We both loved to play football, and we played neighborhood football together. So Darryl and I were friends that way through sports. Once we became high school friends, once we went to the same high school, we became closer that way. Darryl was on the football team when I was a freshman. So he got to play that one game. But Darryl and I always, had fun times together when we, hung out together and played sports. He had his separate friends going out the back side of the house, and I had my separate friends going out the front side of the house, if you could understand what I'm talking about with that. Because I stayed more in Warren Gardens, and Darryl went outside of Warren Gardens on the other side of his house. So we had that relationship before high school as far as becoming friends and interacting with each other like that. Me knowing his parents, his mother, his stepfather, his grandmother. I used to love his grandmother. And we used to have a good time as children. And remember, this happened when we were 15, 16 years old. I moved to Warren Gardens when I was 6. So that was a 9 years of Darryl and I getting to know each other that way as very young children, and not so much as high school children. So that's how me and Darryl relationship became before this incident. We grew up right next to each other.
So this is something that transpired when you guys were young men. And Darryl played one football game, made one touchdown in this game that happened in Charlestown in 1979. And he was shot. And that changed his life forever. And from what I understand, that made him where he was unable to walk and do any of the things for himself. And that was how he lived out his life. However, he also did some great, had major accomplishments despite that. So can we also just talk a little bit about that? Like the things he was able to accomplish and what you guys witnessed him be able to do, and why also we want to tell this story, because it's such a story of resilience and overcoming something traumatic. And again, tonight's episode is about healing in public, which is something Darryl had to do. And then we're going to kind of switch gears and talk about why you guys named it the city that failed us.
Can I kind of go back to our relationship too before I go to the next part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like Joe was saying, he knew him before I did. So when Darryl got there, he didn't play his first year, but he came off of the team when he was a sophomore. And in Boston, sophomore, he was funny, but he was quiet. And I was a senior. I was a captain of the football team. And I saw something in Darryl. And I went to the quarterback, George Coleman, and I said, yo, this young man got some hands, man. And then we both went to the coach. And we were like, wow, this kid got some hands. He could really help us. So if I'm not mistaken, that was our second game. So he started practicing and going into position. He knew he could play, but he was a little bit quiet by saying, this is what I do. So the coach saw him, and the coach was so impressed with him. He was like, okay, you're third string. Now, in that game, the second half, the first half, he did not play. I mean, he played, but very little. And then the second half, coach put him in. So in the first half, he didn't make one catch in his very first game. He didn't score a touchdown, but he caught the pass that led to the touchdown. And so after that incident, we were in halftime waiting. We decided to stay outside because it was a nice day. And somebody from somewhere in Charlestown shot into a crowd of people. And, Darryl got hurt. He got shot in the neck, and he was paralyzed. He's quadriplegic until he passed. And it happened in Charlestown at a time when there was a lot of racial strife.
And until you guys told me about this story, I had never heard of Darryl, which is why, one of the things we talked about when you interviewed me, the importance of telling stories like this, because narrative therapy in general is one of the ways that you really can heal. And a lot of people who may have been there will have vicarious trauma, and that can actually transcend decades, where they may not even realize that, because this was never really talked about and it was sort of just something that happened and everybody just had to move on, that this is one of those things that, maybe you're at a bar or someplace and you be like, man, you remember Darryl, remember what happened with Darryl? There's really never been a story or a way of processing it other than his small group of people, which was his close friends, his mom. But other than that, as a city, it doesn't seem like we did anything really to address this topic after all these decades. And this is where you guys come in at. What a traumatic experience for everyone that was involved to be at a school function and have something like that happen and have it change your entire life, where he was changed, you were changed. I actually mentioned and brought this up, and I think both of you said you never thought about that, if that was some of the reason that led you both to end up being firemen, right? And you said you had never thought about it, so because you couldn't save Darryl that day, and you ended up both going into professions where you could save people.
Yes, that's when you had mentioned that to us, that just opened my eyes. I was like, you know what, she's on to something here. You were, because that seed was planted in me where I thought about my life, from becoming a firefighter, the things I've witnessed, the things I was able to do as a firefighter. And when you said that to me, I was like, that's probably it. That probably it. Getting back to Coach Lau, what you said about Darryl, his mobility being taken away from him, he can't do anything for himself. The one thing that Darryl being shot didn't take away from him was his mind. Darryl was a brilliant person. And that's why he was able to accomplish the things that he was able to accomplish in that chair. Many people would dwindle away. Woe is me. I'm done. I hate the world. I hate this. I hate that. And Darryl never preached that. Every time I took Darryl out where he would do speaking to young people, to old people, to whoever was in the room, he would always say, I don't hate anyone. And he said, I have this bullet in my neck, but that's not going to stop me from what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's to teach love, not hate. You still have a life. You still can move forward regardless of your situation. And that's one thing I loved about my brother. He was so passionate about teaching people not to hate, because he had every right to hate everybody, from the person that pulled that trigger to the people that didn't do anything for him. But he never let that get him down. He never let that get him down. And at least not in front of me. We always had a good time when we were together. And I made sure we were having a good time, as well as he making sure I was having a good time. Because anytime I can get with my brother was a good time. So with everything being taken from him, his mind wasn't taken away. And I believe that sharpened his mind, being in that situation where he knew he had a job to do.
When you also when you talk about some of the things he did after he was shot, I don't know if you know, but Darryl graduated from Northeastern University, because I took him a few times, because he had a regular driver, but every once in a while something would happen, and that's where us four came in. So I would be in class with him, like, damn, this dude is sharp as could be. So he graduated from Northeastern. He also, like Joe said, became a motivational speaker, and he worked for the Massachusetts lottery system, directly for Joe Malone. So, he lived a life that some of us could be, I don't want to say envious, but proud of.
Right.
And one of the things, we'll talk about this when we get into why the city failed us.
Right.
But he did that to take care of his family.
Yeah. What's so interesting, and why I thought this was such a great way to open up season 9, is that a lot of us don't realize how many things we have to be grateful for. And we sometimes will allow experiences to stop us from thriving to reach goals. And you said something that's really profound, that Darryl had every reason to want to stop. He lost his mobility, to hate the world, and he still moved on to want to create a life, the best life he could for himself. So it kind of brings me to one of the questions I have, and I actually think both of you can answer this. What do you think the responsibility is of filmmakers when documenting unresolved trauma? Because this right here is a story that for Darryl never got told. As you said, he passed away before you got a chance to tell it. And both you and Charles, you and Joe, this documentary has opened up a lot. And as you've been interviewing people, you've also seen that there's a lot of unresolved trauma. And one of the things that both of you really wanted to hold space for is how to address that and not harm people again by telling the story. So can we talk a little bit about that? And I think that will segue us into how the city failed us and how therapy plays into all of this.
Can I start on this one, Joe?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. When we started doing this, we understood that the main story is about Darryl's life, about his injury, about his triumph, about everything he did, and all the people that loved him. I mean, and when you find out, there's a lot of people who are noted that love Darryl Williams. But also, one of the things that I tried to, and Joe, he never, said no, Charles. There's some things we had to walk away from. But one of the things I really wanted to do was gain closure for the football players, the cheerleaders, and the spectators at Charlestown. Because nobody ever said anything to them. The police never interviewed us. Nothing. Nobody came to our high school to do any kind of traumatic drama thing. So that means you had 15 to 16 to 17-year-old kids walk away with this in their psyche, and it had to do something. And when I interview people, the first thing that most people say is, yeah, I was here, I was there. Because the reality is when Darryl got shot, we were in a huddle, no more than, I was about 11 feet from Darryl, if that. So I could have been shot. George could have been shot. Brian Holmes, James Wimber, any of these people could have been shot. The cheerleaders, they were on the side practicing for the half, and all they see is people running towards them. They're freaking out. The spectators, Joe could answer that more, but everybody had this thing, and nobody could tell anybody. So when we get together, it's almost like it's a faucet. We want to tell each other all the time the story. Where were you at? Where was I at? How far was I away? Where was this person away? So I heard people, actually, there's one young lady that was a cheerleader, and I asked her, did she want to, be a part of it? And she basically was like, I can't. I spent too many years trying to get over that. And I'm not you. I'm not a therapist. That kind of like, wow,
It kind of shuts you down a little bit because you're like, oh, wow, where do we go with this? And that was something we talked about,
Yeah.
What is our responsibility as the general public? How do we support one another in this when certain people don't want to deal with it and don't want to talk about it? Should that mean the story shouldn't be talked about? And we also talked about the city did some things, right? But they didn't do enough, right? And then the Pope came, and that was just like the highlight of that time. But I do want to, make sure we give those who did attempt to do something at least acknowledgement, because I also think that at times people don't know what to do in those moments. But something that stood out to me that you told me was like, after everything happened, everybody just left and took the tea, and just went back to the high school. And it was just like everybody just went home.
Well, what it was we now both teams suffered. I just want to make that very clear. And the black players that had to be bused to Charlestown, they suffered as well. And I had to make that, and and some of the whole thing about the trauma is I never thought about it, nor did I care about it. And I feel ashamed of that. That those same black players, I was like, I don't care. But what happened is we all had to take the bus. We had a school bus to take us back to Boston or back into Roxbury or Jamaica Plain for our thing. And so we got to Jamaica Plain. It was late because they kept it. The thing was shut down. We got home at night. And when we got back, there was nobody at the high school. Nobody was there. We got off the bus and we had to go get on the MBT or the train, the overhead back at the time.
I remember that down Dudley.
Mhm.
And Joe had to carry his equipment home to give to his mother.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that
Well, that brings me to let me that's going to bring us into the next segment. So let me go ahead and throw this up here, because I think that really opens up what this therapy means, right? Because when you said that, I felt that, right? To have to bring your friend's gear home and you're the one to report to his mother that he's been harmed and that he's in the hospital. All I can say to myself is, where are the adults? Where's the school officials? Where's the police? Why is that teenage boy's responsibility to go and tell his friend's mom that her son was just hurt?
Why? Yeah. Why did I even have his equipment? It was a crime scene. You know, why don't you want to examine his helmet, his shoulder pads? And I remember that day like it was yesterday, because I tell Charles, and I tell the story all the time. Darryl had just spray painted his helmet that morning. So I remember getting purple paint on my hands from his helmet. And I can see that like it was yesterday. And like I said, we lived in the same place. So it was a 5-second walk from his house to my house to tell his parents what had happened. And, you know, that sat with me for years until I was able to suppress it enough where I can live. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, subconsciously, that's probably why I became a firefighter. I just want to help. What can I do? And, you know, I put that in the back of my mind, and I didn't think about that until I'm telling the story again.
Yeah.
And I relive that, you know, I relive the moment I'm walking across the field and the shot rang out. I relive all those things. And it's and as a young person, when you don't know what to do with that, back in 1979, where there's no cell phone, so you can't call your parents, you can't, you know, do any of that thing, get in contact with anybody. So how do you deal with that as a young person back in 79? I wasn't a violent student. I wasn't one of them that go look for trouble. So I wasn't one of them that's going to be, you know, let's go to Charlestown, let's go to South Boston, let's go to East Boston, let's go start some trouble. That wasn't me. So I wasn't that type of kid growing up. So what do I do with what I just witnessed, what I just had to do? So over the years, I suppressed it. I didn't talk about it, you know? And when I was able to help my brother, that was our first way of trying to help him, because we couldn't save him from what happened. And then becoming, you know, who we became as firefighters and pillars of the community and things like that. So telling this story, you know, my tagline for my business is changing lives through the eye of the lens. And that's what I'm doing with this film. Hopefully I can change somebody's life. Hopefully somebody that didn't witness what we witnessed, but witnessed the trauma, that they say, you know what, I still deal with this because I seen this film. Let me get some help. Let me deal with what I'm dealing with over the past 30 years, 20 years, or even 2 years ago.
Yes.
So, you know, that's the reason that I want this film. That's one of the reasons why I want this film out there. First, to tell the truth, you know, and second, to get people help. Like I told you when we interviewed you, I don't want this to trigger anybody's trauma. I just want people to get help because they still are traumatized, you know, and that's my end goal in all of this, where we all can heal. We all can get something that we need 46 years later, you know? 46 years later, we're still dealing with certain things. And as we look back in our lives, we say, okay, this is why I became this way. This is why this happened this way. Now I understand.
Yeah, so some of the things that we talked about was exposure to community violence, because we know there's a lot of violence that happens in our community. There's a lot of traumatic events that happen in our community. And often we don't think about that they produce higher rates of anxiety and hypervigilance and emotional suppression, right? Because you have to find a way to cope, right? And often that is, I can't think about this every day, finding a distraction, finding a way to move forward, or making meaning and finding purpose by becoming firemen, right? Actively going back and giving back to help your friend. These are all the things that, you've done that you probably didn't realize was a way for you to actually heal. And ultimately, the final finale is making this documentary, right? And for a lot of people, you hear about people writing their story, doing poetry, which is something that I actively promote, writing books. All of these things, right, are ways for people to get their story out and to deal with their emotions without suppressing them. So I commend you. I know this has not been easy. Now, when you think about, you touched on this a little bit, but who would you consider to be the collateral damage after the shooting, and why? Other than Darryl?
Everybody.
Yeah.
The students, the city. When you, all right, being in that environment. So you touched on the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, Darryl got shot on Friday the 28th. It was a big thing. It was a massive thing. Front page every day for 4 days. All right. Then when you look at the city of Boston and Massachusetts is the third largest Catholic state in the country, only behind New York and Connecticut. So their emphasis and their main focus was about the Pope coming to Boston. And so the same information that everybody knew, and everybody knew that this young man got shot, went from page 1 to the back pages, and as far back as they could put it. And when nobody said, let's go back to this, because what happened is when the Pope came, and they almost felt like, well, nobody cares, so let's keep it back here. Let's not do a proper investigation. Let's not go help these people. Let's, the captain of the Charlestown football team, Bill Willis, he told me, he said we were like throwaway kids. So how can you not feel a certain way when you feel like yourself, I'm a throwaway kid. Nobody really cares. Today, just imagine everything that they would do for every last person. And they would do stuff for people that didn't see anything, just to make sure they're okay. They let us go home, and they said, now we're going to try to put this away. We're going to try to put this in the back burner. If nobody else talks about it, then we're not going to talk about it. And then after, there was a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of high school kids got very upset because they felt, y'all are not helping nothing. Y'all are putting this in, y'all are forgetting about this. So Miss Darryl's mom had to call for peace because so many kids got so upset, violence broke out in the city. So there was retaliation because the city said, oh, if we can get away with not saying anything, let's not say anything. So you can't tell me they're not hurt as well.
So yeah, collateral damage, like Charles said, was all of us, was his family, the community, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. If they're not going to do anything for Darryl, then I know they're not going to do anything for us if something happens to us. So yeah, the collateral damage was the community, which we all came from. Like Charles said, the black students were bused to Charlestown. They were from Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and the city failed them too, because the same way we didn't get any treatment, they didn't get any treatment. So we were the collateral damage that the city seemed to be okay with. I don't know if mental health was a big factor back in '79 and therapy and things like that. I don't know. But something could have been done. There's been mental health issues since the time of man. So something could have been done, but we were all collateral damage because nothing was done.
So we talked a little bit about that there were some meetings, community meetings, but they were short-lived. Now, was that in collaboration, or did that coincide with the Pope coming? And so once that happened, the community meeting stopped, and it just sort of was like, okay, we did what we were supposed to do. How did that transpire? Because during that time, I believe in the 70s, there was a lot of racial unrest, right? So within the Black community, did it also just go away? I know on a larger level in the city, but what about within the community? Was it still being talked about locally?
Well, that was the only way it did come back up into focus, because the Black community wouldn't let it go. We couldn't let it go because one of ours was hurt. And, one of the things you got to remember is that being from that time, because in 1975 with the busing, the busing decree, that's only 4 years later. So we all had stories. We all would see the news about, people in Southeast Charlestown throwing bricks at kids. We would all see that in the news. So these conversations were had within us. We knew this. I have a friend of mine who lives here. And funny enough, he was talking about the trauma of what the things he had to go through and didn't know we ever met with you, La. Mm-hmm. Didn't know it. Right. And so, the trauma thing is serious. And when you talk about the community meetings, like there was one that I came across that was, it used to be a show called Say Brother. And they had all of the kids from different schools on there, white and Black. And that probably happened a couple of weeks later because everybody felt like, y'all are trying to get rid of this. Y'all are trying to make this not happen. And there were some people that, of course, parents became active. They were like, just imagine, like Joe said, we didn't have cell phones. I couldn't get on the cell phone and say, yeah, Mom, this is what happened. No, they had to see it on the news. They have to see it. And just imagine the beginning, because Darryl was a juvenile, of course they're going to withhold his name. So just imagine a parent sitting at home talking about, was that my child? Was that my son that got hurt because he played for Jamaica Plain? Was that my daughter? Did she get hurt because she was a cheerleader at Jamaica Plain? There was no way nobody knew. And for 4 days, now 4 days later, they were like, we don't care either.
So as we now look back, and we think about accountability and we look at the city now, what do you think that should have looked like? Given that it was, a school football game, it was a random act of violence. They didn't even know where the shots had came from. And I think you also shared later that they did find the individuals. And later they said it wasn't a racial, it was just manslaughter. It was just kids playing around, and they tried to, minimize the impact of it all.
So,
well, there were 3 individuals, and the story that everybody knows from our time is that they were shooting at pigeons. That was the story. We uncovered some things that might be different, but the whole thing was they were shooting at pigeons. Yeah, it was a difficult time. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, that was the story. That was the narrative that they put out there for years. And everybody, if you ask about the Charlestown shooting of Darryl Williams, that know about it, will say, "Yeah, weren't they shooting at pigeons off a roof?" And that's because that's the story that was told. But as Charles said, we've uncovered some things. We've interviewed some people that said otherwise. People that were close to the three individuals that were arrested.
Right. And during that time too,
John.
they probably wanted to make sure we didn't have any race riots. So they needed to come up with something to
Definitely.
calm us,
Well,
calm it down,
yes.
because it was they needed a story that was going to keep the peace, shall I say, although I don't see how this could ever be a peaceful situation. And in terms of like restitution or support for Darryl and his mom, none of that ever happened. Nobody was ever held responsible for him basically having his entire life changed.
No one at all. There might have been a few people, when, and all this will come out in the documentary, in the film. I don't want to give away too much, but
no, we don't want to do
money.
that.
Yes, money had to be raised to help Darryl.
Got it.
In certain ways, instead of the city saying, "What do you need? We got you." You got hurt playing a football game on city property, school property. What can we do, Mr. Simmons, to make you and your son's life a little easier? No, none of that happened. None of that happened. Everything they had to get on their own. Which was a slap in the face by the whole city, the administration at that time, and even those moving forward, other administrations that could have stepped in and say, you know what about this young man that this happened 10 years ago? How's he doing now? What can we do? Let's check on him. Let's see, because
at least
what we're
tuition to go to Northeastern.
Yes, these are things that should have happened.
Joe, can I talk about his mobility situation?
Yes, go ahead, Charles. Yeah.
Okay, so I know, and I'm asking Joe because I don't want to say no. We're gonna keep that. So when you think about this, there came a time when he had to get around to go to Northeast and go to his job. And in Darryl's lifetime, he had 2 accessibility vans, just 2. The first one money had to be raised, and it was, I think it was at the help of Joe Malone. The second one, his family paid for. You can't tell me that for the rest of Darryl's life, somebody from the city of Boston shouldn't have came up to his door with some keys to the newest and latest and most, technologically safe van for him to get around. That first van, Joe will tell you, we used to be like, man, I don't want to drive this thing. We were scared. And we drive it everywhere, but that's what he had. That's all. So the city never came to him and said, hey, look, here's some keys.
Yeah. And like I said, not just in the beginning, just throughout his life. It still never happened. You know what I'm saying? And not saying it wasn't sought after. Not like his mother just gave up and said, forget about it. No, she never gave up. She still isn't giving up. And he's been dead 15 years. I'll be 16 years this year. She still isn't giving up. And that's why I believe she gave us her blessing to, it's time. It's time. Because I know she's tired of fighting still. And things need to come out. And one thing I found out doing this project is that we found out things that the family didn't even know. Which opened their eyes to like, what? Where did you get that? Where did you hear that? we got it from this source, that source. Because Charles and I, like I told Charles, we're not investigative reporters. We're filmmakers. But you still got to do some digging to get the things to make a story. And we're finding out some stuff that we didn't know and the family didn't even know. And Charles and I, we sit down and we have meetings and we go, what? Where'd you hear that? What? Here's the article. Here's the judge. Here's the lawyers. You know, here's the jailhouse confession, and here's this and here's that. And it's like, it's amazing. So I think she gave us her blessings because she said, okay, tell his story, please, the best way you guys can. And, you know, she has our back, whatever we need. She's right there. And we have hers. And we have hers. And, you know, the story's gonna, Darryl did write a book. He did write a book that's being published right now. And this movie is going to lead right to his book. You want to hear Darryl's words? Get this book. And the movie just is the tip of the iceberg. Now here's the man. You know, yes. His words.
So you guys have been listening to Conversations with Coach Lau. We got Charles and we have Joe, the producers of The City That Failed Us, story of Darryl K. Williams. So we're getting behind the scenes, right? We're getting the lead up. So when's the documentary scheduled to release or be done?
Well, I hate putting the time on it. Okay. I know it will be done this year. Believe it or not, we've been in production since last January 2025.
It takes a while.
Yes, it takes a while.
Especially, what do you call this? An investigative
reporting.
You got to go digging stuff up and really figuring out the timeline. You know, because you want to tell a very detailed, deep story, and you want to pull out things that people didn't know, which means you guys had to do a lot of interviews and it's got a lot of work to put together a documentary. It just doesn't happen overnight. So
and especially when the person you're documenting isn't here anymore. Mm-hmm. That's tough too. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're doing a story on a person that's alive, they can carry the story themselves because it's their story. But when we got to go back and interview people and find quotes and find things that Darryl may have done and may have said, it's a little bit more difficult. With Charles and I meeting on Friday, we found some other stuff out. And I'm like, at some point, you have to put a cap on it because you have so much information that it's, you know, we'll be doing this for 2 years. And with his mother being up in age, we don't want that. We need to finish this while she can appreciate the story that she lived all these years, you know, because it's not just about Darryl, it's about her living these years with her son and how it changed the dynamic of their family because she had to take care of her son and his sister. You know, so there's an urgency, to get this done, you know, because it's been 46 years.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? That's a long time. And a lot of people have already passed on that I would love to have seen this. And we're going to do some honorary mentions in this documentary also. Right.
You know, when you said that, it actually gave a whole nother perspective about a mother's pain and a mother's story. Because ultimately you are giving her a space to heal. At the top of the hour, we'll have to, you know, do our station ID. But ideally, you, Charles, and everybody that's involved is healing in public. Like this documentary is going to pull things out that people have suppressed for a long time. Not to mention you and Charles have been both going through a plethora of emotions yourselves as you've been doing the work to put this together. So, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned 46 years because again, this season 9 is my chapter 50. Mm-hmm. And I think often a lot of things come full circle in your 40s and your 50s. You get clarity discernment, and you get some reason I feel like you're ready. Hold on.
Expect the unexpected. Unorthodox radio from Boston and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
So I was saying, I feel like you're at a point where you're ready. You know, you're often ready to tell the story, and to address things that maybe you didn't want to address before. I don't know what that is about this time in our lives, but it's almost like, you know what? It's time to have that conversation. It's time to bring these things to the forefront. And I feel like that's what you guys are doing for his mom, but also for yourselves. 46 years, you know, but at some point it's like, you know what? We got to talk about this. We can't keep just acting like this didn't happen. So.
Well, we can't even keep it to the select few. You know, it right now feels like the select few. And when I say the select few, I'm talking about the teammates, the cheerleaders, certain people who know certain things. Because the people will say in a minute, oh, my mother went to school with Miss Simmons, or this, that, or I know his sister from this. But the funny thing is everybody says, whatever happened to those guys? You know, I had one person say, is Darryl still with us? He's been dead, like Joe said, for 15 years.
Wow.
And so if somebody asks, or they might say, whatever happened to Darryl? And what about whatever happened out there? So that means even the people in the city don't know everything.
Right. Well, let me go ahead and bring us to, because we're getting close to the end now.
Okay.
Of the show, but the bet on self moments. I mean, you guys are already, for the most part, highlighting it. But bet on self moments are really those times in our lives. And I think Darryl did a lot of this. Those moments that we decide, right, to heal, to grow, to change, even when it's uncomfortable. And I feel like that's basically, in a lot of ways, you guys are doing that with this film. But is there any other moments that you're showing publicly or maybe privately where you feel like you guys are betting on yourselves and moving this narrative forward for yourselves or for Darryl?
Well, I feel I'm betting on myself. For one, this is so emotionally draining to me. So I have to bet on myself. If not, it's I'm gonna miss something, and I don't want to miss anything telling this story. So it's I'm betting on myself to keep it moving, making smart decisions on what we're trying to do, reach out to the right people. So I'm betting on myself to stay, up to the task, because it's very draining, time consuming, and I don't want to drop the ball. So I'm betting on myself just as much as I'm betting on my partner, and we lean on each other for one thing or another. And we bounce things off of each other. So I'm betting on myself not to drop the ball and get weary, and finish the race, because that's what it's all about. It's finishing. Last year, 3-4 months into it, the question I said to Charles, we can't even quit if we want to now. We're too much into it, and that was only 3 months in, and now we're a whole year in. There's no way we can stop, because we've uncovered too much. Too many people have told their story. Too many people are suffering still, and too many people have things to say. So I'm betting on myself to get these things done.
Thank you, Joe. Charles?
Well, I'm betting on people doing the right thing. Yes, I'm betting on myself to finish this. I'm betting on myself to walk through this with my partner, because he's calmed me down sometimes. because sometimes I can get a little bit, and because the other thing is, and like Joe said, it's very draining. So I was a senior when Darryl got hurt. I was, like I said, the captain of the football team. So I'm reaching out to most people. Joe had people he had to reach out to, but one of my responsibilities that we said, okay, this is my responsibility, was to call and reach out and find people on the internet. And I found you. But in some cases, like I told you, the stories just start coming out. And what do I look like saying, I don't want to hear that? I can't. I got to be their sounding board. So I'm betting on myself to have the wisdom and the patience and the kindness to hear my teammates and my schoolmates, and to be maybe the voice that says, hey, we're doing this for you. We're trying to do this so you can have closure. We and even the blessings of other people. I've had people who call me and say, hey, is there anything I could do? What do you need? What do I need? I had to go to Joe one day and say, what am I supposed to say to that? Because this is just me and Joe doing this. This is me and him funding everything. But people will say, hey, what do you need? We possibly have another cameraman now because he is in this field and he's like, oh, I got you. Huh? So there's a lot of people who want to see this done and want to see it come through. I have other friends that came through and say, what do you need? So like Joe said, we can't stop. We can't stop. We have to keep it going. Because what does it look like now to those people who said, what do we need? And we never took nothing from nobody, just in-kind help. But what does it look like telling those people who gave us in-kind help to say, we're done. We're done.
Yeah.
Can't do it. A news reporter that was friends with Darryl, he asked both of us, because we were on the phone with him together. He says, aren't y'all a little bit nervous bringing up some of the stuff that people are not going to hear? If they want to come down here, more power to them, But no, we're not.
Like you guys said, it's been 46 years. Some people have already passed on. Darryl's passed on. His mother is up in age. Yes, it's going to stir the pot. It's probably going to bring up and even open up some things that people didn't know. Maybe there should have been a civil suit. Maybe there still needs to be a civil suit for things that wasn't brought up and not addressed. Who's to say, right? And so it's gonna definitely open up, as they call it, a closed case. It's gonna open up a can of worms.
It should.
I think that his life needs it, because like you said, 1979, more than likely things were getting brushed under the rug. More than likely things were not transparent. Just knowing what we know about the history, I would put a lot of money on it that it was definitely something that they needed to make sure got cleaned up and packaged up in a nice little bow. And we also was black folks, Black folk don't got deep pockets. We don't got big attorneys, lawyers, none of that. So
right.
So I'm sure all of those things are the case. So I think it's long overdue. I know it's a lot and it's emotionally taxing, but I think once this is done, there's going to be a level of healing and relief that you're both going to feel that you've done it, right? Because this is scary. It takes a lot of courage. And there's a lot of fears of unknown. You don't really know what's on the other side and how it's going to be received by the world, but you know that his story needs to be told. So that being said, let's move on to Coach's Corner, where we just wrap things up, and I think that this is a time to reflect on what you want the listeners, especially tonight's listeners, to take away from your perspective. I know the documentary isn't out yet, but hopefully it inspires somebody to tell their story to go look up Darryl, to go and just do their own research? Or is there any way that people can support and help the work that you are doing? What do you want people to know? What are some takeaways that you like to leave them with?
Go ahead, Joe.
One thing is it's never too late to do something good for somebody. As a creator, if you have a story to tell, you can tell it. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need fancy microphones. You don't need fancy cameras. All you need is a pen and a pad and some creativity. It's never too late. Giles and I both are in our 60s now, but we still know we have work to do. Never give up on yourself and always stand for something. This is a project that's near and dear to our hearts that we've been wanting to do for a long time. And, now is the time. This is on God's time. He supplied us with everything we need. Like Charles said, people say, what do you need? We don't even know what we need because we're doing what we're doing. When we run into something that we need, then we know we need it. But at this point, we're not stopping because of a need. We're keeping it going. So I just want to leave that with people. Like, you have a passion about something, do it. It's never too late. God give you this breath, you got another chance to do it. And this story is near and dear to us, so we're doing it, and we have been doing it. And that's just the nugget I want to leave with people.
Charles, in a minute or less.
I took up all your time.
About the story and about what Joe just said about never being afraid to do something different. I do believe in a little phrase or saying or philosophy that when the door opens, be brave enough, smart enough, or intuitive enough to walk through it. And I mean, when I say a door, I mean some of the different things you could do in life, some of the things you could help or change, or even for yourself. Yes, I frame artwork. Yes, I'm a weapons instructor. Yes, I do these things because when the door opened, I was acquisitive enough to walk through it. About the story, please, it's we have to hold people accountable. We have to hold people accountable. And we have to learn how to hold people accountable because in our communities, there's so many people that police officers don't look like us. We have to hold people accountable in our community.
Yes. I have to thank you both. And I want to say this. Healing in public is not oversharing. It's restoring a narrative and controlling the narrative. When trauma is witnessed but never processed, the nervous system stays on alert for decades. I'll say that again. When trauma is witnessed but never processed, the nervous system stays on alert for decades. That's not a weakness, that's biology. When we talk about keeping your head on the swivel, these are the things that are, I would say, collateral damage for us as a community, as witnessing traumatic events all the time. Communities don't just grieve deaths, we grieve abandonment. And when institutions fail to respond, the trauma becomes intergenerational. This season is just not about just having conversations just to have them. It's about having conversations that spark more conversations and inspire people to live out loud and to heal and to grow and to, again, take accountability, not just for yourself, but for each other, and to be able to call each other out on things and hold each other accountable. This season, we're naming what has never been named. So we're going to have a lot of people that are going to come on and they're going to talk about things that maybe you never even thought to talk about. So I want to thank you, Joe. I want to thank you, Charles, for your bravery and your courage. I want to thank Darryl for not giving up and for going out there, getting his degree and being a motivational speaker. I wish I would have had an opportunity to see that. I hope there's some footage that will be included in the documentary of him doing his thing. But I know this is a tough story to tell because you guys were dear friends and you both witnessed it. And I don't know if everybody realized that both Charles and Joe were actually there. This isn't something they're just talking about third party, but they physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally were present and saw their friend get hurt and had to see the residual effects of what that did to him until his passing. So my heart goes out to both of you as you continue to heal, as you continue to grieve, because grieving is not linear, right? It is something that fluctuates and stays with you forever. Like people think it just ends one day, but that's just not true. So any final thoughts? Anything else you guys want to share before we wrap up?
I just want to, and I don't know if people know this, there's a photo out there of me and Darryl. Just like I was the one that told his mother that this happened to him, I was the one that took him back to that field for the first and only time he ever went back to Charlestown. And there's a photo from the Boston Globe. The Globe had photographers there. So with that, it's almost mind-blowing that the last time I was there, I had to give the news. And then the next time I was there, I was with the man that I had to give the news about. And I believe Darryl went back there. He wanted to see where his feet last touched the ground and get some type of closure from his. Now, I can't speak for Darryl. I didn't know his mind frame, but I would like to think he wanted to see where his feet last touched the ground, and that was that field. And there's a photo out there that we will share if people haven't seen it, of him and I back at that field at Charlestown High for the first and last time. Well, for the second and last time, I should say. We were there as kids and then as adults. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Well, I think that, I had never heard of this story, but I know that it has touched my heart and my spirit. And I send a lot of love to his mother because she's outlived him. But just having a son myself, I can only imagine the pain, the agony, and just the resilience that she had to have to get him through that. So, yeah. So you guys have been listening to Conversations with Coach La. This is episode 145. And this is season 9. Make sure you tune in and you come back next week live for another virtual couch episode. I have another awesome guest that will be coming to talk to me, and we will be going through what therapy means. We'll talk about their bet on self moments, and we'll also do Coach's Corner. You don't want to miss it. Also tune in tomorrow for the Morning Cafe. And as always, Boston has Black radio. We are the Urban Heat 98.1 FM exclusively on iHeartRadio. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Joe.
Thank
and
you.
have a beautiful night. We'll see you next week. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.